Welcome to CIS195 Lecture Week 2. For this week, we're going to be discussing some new tags that you haven't used before to help bring out some life into your pages. We'll be going through what are known as inline and block elements. These types of elements describe how items are placed onto the screen visually. And then we'll be going over a concept known as absolute and relative paths. This describes how do we find the information that we're going to be displaying on our web page. And then we'll take some time to discuss how do you do error handling. We're going to start off here by talking about block and inline elements. So first off, the concept here is block versus inline. What does that really mean? Well, it's going to be easier to demo this, so let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste some information here into this blank web page that I've got here. So let me go ahead and do that. And then I'll go ahead and we'll demo it over here to the side. So a block element, as it says here, always start a new line and push the next element down. Now this header element here and these two paragraph, those are block elements. Now if I were to do something, for instance, add another paragraph element up here with some random text, when I refresh the page here on the right, we'll see these two paragraph lines will be pushed down to make room for this new element, as it did here. Now, inline elements, they're a little different. They don't start a new line. They instead will stay on the same line and move things to the right on a line. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to insert what are known as some inline elements. So let's go ahead here and I will refresh the page and you can see this happen. So in this I have some block elements and I actually have an inline element included within the block element. In this case, the strong element does not cause a new line to happen. It actually does what it's supposed to do within the block element itself. It creates the strong or the bolded format here on the word strong. Now you may remember last week when we were working with the image tag and I had to use the break tags in order to move it to the next line. This indicates that the image tag is an inline element. I'll go ahead and I'm going to demo this here. I'm just going to take where it says inline elements here. I'm actually going to insert an inline tag, the image tag in here. You actually can do this, as we saw down here. And if I refresh the page, you'll notice that it places this image. There isn't anything actually for it to display, so it's displaying this kind of a default image. So that shows us that this actually just pushes stuff to the right rather than creating a new line and pushing it down like the block elements do. Alright, we're going to move on to nested lists next, so let me just go ahead and I'm going to delete this information here. And I'm going to go ahead and I am going to show a nested list. So nested lists, they allow you to create a list within a list. So let me go ahead and I'm going to paste in what I have here. So this is a lot of text here, but it shows you the complexity that you can create. So in this case, I've got an unordered list at the top level, and I've got two areas with this list, my top college teams and my bottom college teams. And then within each of these list items, I've got three ordered list items. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So this shows you what a nested list can look like. So the next element we're going to look at here is the figure element. So the figure element, it works in conjunction with images. It allows you to display an image and then put a caption below the image. So here I've got a sample that we can look at. Go ahead and I'll reload this. So I have an image called graph PNG, and you can look over here on the left and you can see that I'm displaying, and then the figure caption places the caption directly below that image. Our next tag here is going to be the block quote. So let me delete this out of here and put the block quote in here. Now, block quotes, these are typically used when you want to quote something that's a little longer than what you might do within just a paragraph of text. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So block quotes just place the text kind of stand alone by itself on the page. Away from the other, you'll notice that it's indented just a little bit as well. Our next element that we're going to look at is the cite element. It stands for citation. Copy the wrong thing there, so let's go back and copy the right thing. There we go. So it's the cite tag. I've placed this within a paragraph of text, so we have our block element and then our inline element embedded within it. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So you'll notice with this, it keeps the citation on the same line. You'll notice that it's just italicized here within the view, although the citation tag can be useful, once again, if we look at this from special readers, or if you're wanting a website, if you're wanting a web crawler to see this information in the back end and maybe highlight it for you. Okay, our next set of elements here, these are the special characters. There are many types of special characters that you may want to use within your web page. These are typically things that typically are reserved, used for other things, or you can't type them on your keyboard. We're going to be looking at two different examples here. Let me go ahead and I'll paste this in, and I'll refresh the web page. So some of these characters, the ones that are reserved in this case, are the less than and greater than symbols. The reason you can't typically type these directly into the HTML code is because they are part of the HTML standard. You'll notice they surround the tags. So in order to display these, I have to use a different type of method, and that goes through this method. I have to use an ampersand. I have to use the code and then a semicolon after it. There are two different ways of doing it in this. For example, for the greater than and less than symbols, this particular case, it has some letters, a kind of a shortcut way of typing them. And then we have another method, and this is for the Unicode symbols. This first one here shows the greater than and less than, and then the other one is the copyright symbol. We have a shortcut, and then there's a Unicode symbol that we could have used as well. I'll demo that. So instead of the and copy, I'm actually going to use the equivalent here, which would be an ampersand 169. I'll refresh this, and it decided not to work. I know I missed an item here. I missed the pound symbol in front of this, so let's do that. Let me back up for a moment. You'll notice that there's a red here. That indicates that Visual Studio Code determined there was an error in my code, and it was trying to identify that to me. We'll talk about that just a little bit later. So let me put the pound symbol back here and refresh this, and now we have the copyright symbol. The last new element that we're going to be talking about is the horizontal rule. Now, a horizontal rule is nothing special. It's just a line that gets placed across the screen. In this case, I'm just going to add it to the code that we already have. So let me go ahead and I'll just press an enter key here. And this is a simple one. It's just an HR tag. It does not have an ending tag, so it makes it one of those special tags. So let me go ahead and I'll refresh the page here. And you'll notice that a line has been placed across the page. And this is just to help separate information if you find that useful. So one thing you're going to notice as you are building your web pages is that you're going to make errors. You're going to have problems with what you typed, and you may not notice it while you're doing it until after the page is displayed. We already saw this when I accidentally forgot to put the pound symbol. We saw this here. And what it did was it actually displayed the text that I had typed rather than put the symbol that I had expected. So let's talk about in Visual Studio Code how it assists you in this. So in this particular case, you'll notice it created this red here to indicate that, hey, I see a problem. Now the problem is going to be somewhere near where the red shows up. In this particular case, it shows up, the problem is after where the red is at. But sometimes we'll see this in other areas. For example, let's put back in an image tag here. So if I put in my image tag here and I remove a quote, if we look along this line, we'll notice that at the end of the line, we have the quote indicated in red. So in this particular example, the error is before the quote, or excuse me, before the red that's indicated. So error checking will not specifically point out where the error is. All it is telling you is, hey, I noticed something's wrong, and you need to pay attention to it. Now sometimes you'll make errors and you won't even see them. Visual Studio won't point them out, and actually the web page, or excuse me, the browser won't display them either. So let me go ahead and I'm going to fix this error here. And then I'm going to create a different error. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to remove the ending tag at the end of this line. Now you'll notice there is nothing red. It's not telling me there's an error. But what happens if I go ahead and I display this? Actually, let me remove the image tag just so I don't confuse this here. You'll notice that everything is displayed correctly. I don't have a problem here. Actually, let me just go up even to the line above it and remove the ending tag. And I'll refresh it. You notice nothing breaks. I don't have any problems. It's displayed correctly. Well, this is very normal. Browsers are designed to try to fix errors that they see that people do, and this is a pretty common one. It's forgetting an ending tag. So the browser will attempt to fix these for you, and part of the reason it tries to fix these is because the companies that make these browsers, they want your web pages to look good. And the reason they want them to look good is because they make money off of you. So they spend a lot of time and a lot of money to make sure their browsers are going to display your web pages as they hoped you intended them. Okay, we have two other tools at our disposal to help us with finding errors. One of these is called the inspection tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this a little bigger here so that we can see things just a little better. Okay, so on my Windows computer, I'm going to right-click on this page, and I am going to go to the option in the pop-up menu called Inspect. So what Inspect does is it's actually looking at the page and giving us some information about it from a developer standpoint. So in this case, you'll notice I'm looking at the page, and it's showing different areas of this. It's collapsed certain areas here. The head is collapsed. I can actually make it larger. Errors can be displayed here if you're having them. The typical errors that this displays are on the programming side of it, on the JavaScripting side. So we won't be seeing any of those here. I can do a particular error, and this has to do with a broken link in an image file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attempt in our web page to do a broken link here. Let me go ahead and I'll put our image file back in here. So I'll actually just misname the file. And let's refresh this here. And you might notice something changed. In the upper right corner of the inspection page, there's a little red X. If I click on that, down at the bottom of this, under the console area, it tells me that file such and such is not found. So this is a tool that can assist in certain cases to help you find errors. Now the last tool we're going to look at here is more than just an error checking tool. It's known as a validator. It's actually going to take the code that we've written and it's going to validate it against the standard that is HTML. So we're going to go to a new web page here. This is called validator.w3.org. Go ahead and I'm going to close the inspection element here. So what this allows us to do is to put in the code that we've written for our page, and then this service will check it against the HTML standard and tell us does it meet it. So what I'll do is I'm just going to copy our code here. I'm going to choose the validate by direct input, and I'm going to paste in our code, and I'm going to have it check it. Okay, so let's see what it says. So it's telling us there are no warnings to show. As far as it's concerned, everything looks fine. And you'll notice that I am missing ending tags here. So as far as the validator is concerned, missing an ending P tag is not something to be worried about. But let's go ahead and let's make some sort of an error here and see if it catches it. So why don't I change something here in our validator. I'll call that title 1 and then a slash title. Let's have it recheck it. So here it is noticed an error. It said the head element, which is here, and then we have these embedded areas within it. One of those happens to be title. It's telling us that there's a problem here. So it's missing an instance of this. It doesn't understand what that really is. And it says we've got a stray ending element, and then you notice this just has caused all sorts of problems throughout the page. So this is helpful if you have very long and more complex documents to help you check where problems are, and also it can be used to just ensure that you're meeting the standard so that your page will display correctly in all browsers. Alright, let me go ahead and reset up the page here so that things are displaying correctly. And I want to talk about the last item, and this is called folders and paths. So when you're designing a web page, you often need to tell it where to find other resources. And it's really important. It's really important for for the browser to understand where to find these resources. So as part of your job as the designer, you need to design and decide where do I want to put these different resources. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to bring over a File Explorer and show you how I've set up this particular lesson. So here is my File Explorer window showing the area that we're working at right now. So currently we're in the index.html file that we have been using, and this is located within this directory, the Week2 and then subfolder lecture directory. There's several other files within this folder, and then this folder actually has some subfolders associated with it as well. So when we're talking about files, and resources, we need to be able to describe where those are at. So if we look at the index.html file that we've been working with, under image, here you'll notice that it's showing the name of the file. This is using what is known as relative addressing. We are saying relative to where we are at. So in this particular case, we are in the lecture folder. Relative to that, you'll find a file called graph. Change this back. You'll find a file named graph.png, and that is true. Where we're at this moment, there is a file called graph.png. If I go ahead and go back to here and try to show that file. Excuse me here, trying to back up. I've got something covering it on my end. Give me just a moment. So we'll show here that our graph is showing on our page. Now if I were to take this here and move it, let's say, to the pictures folder. So I'm going to move that out of the way because this makes more sense. Let's put all the pictures in the pictures folder. If I go back over here to our web page cannot find that. It doesn't know where it is anymore. So now I need to tell it, where is that? So I need to use some more, I have to give it some more information on how to find it. So to find this, I have to give it the location relative to where I'm at. So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to click on the address bar, and you'll notice this changes the address a little bit, kind of explain it to me, where is this in our file structure. So if I click on pictures here, go to that folder. So there's our file. You'll notice we've added this slash and then pictures to our file path. Let me go back. So there's lecture, and then if I go down to pictures, it adds a slash and the pictures. So in my source here, in order to locate this file now from the location I'm at, I need to append onto this the name of the folder that it's in this case, pictures. And you notice here, it's actually trying to tell me, hey, maybe this is what you want. And this is exactly what I want. Pictures, the folder, a slash, to indicate we're moving down. We're going to be moving into that resource, and then the resource. So now, if I go back to here, we should show the graph again, as we wanted. Now we can also do things a little differently here. Let's go ahead and go up a level. Now I've got another folder here called Pages that I wanted to look at. So we're going to be, instead of going down into a folder, we're going to be coming up out of a folder. So what I'd like to do in this particular case is I'm going to go into the Pages folder, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this page1.html. I'm going to give this some standard information, and then I want to put in here, I'm just going to put a link tag. So we're going to try to link this back up to our index page. So we want to reference the page that is in the folder above it, so the index.html. So let's think about how do we do this. So we know we want index.html. Let me go ahead and finish up this tag here. The index page in the folder above this page. And let's go ahead and refresh this. Oh, actually, of course not. We're not going to see this because we're not on that page. So let me go ahead and bring this page over. Alright, so here is that link. Now if I click this, it's going to break. Of course, it can't find it because the index page is not in that location. It's actually, so there is no index page here. There's just this page. So we need to go up a level. So to go upwards, we have to use a special command, and that's a dot, then a slash. So the dot indicates go upward, one folder level. And you'll notice in this case, Visual Studio Code figured out what I wanted and realized, hey, here's these other things that we could go to at that point. So working in a relative environment can be a little confusing, but it's the best thing you can do for your web pages. So let me go ahead and just go back over here, minimize this. Let's refresh that page and let's see if it works. There it did. So when I clicked that link, it actually went upward, found the page, and displayed it for us. So we've talked quite a bit about relative paths, so let's talk about the other one, which is called the absolute path. An absolute path tells us the complete map on how to get to the information. So in this particular case, if we wanted to get to the direct location of this, I have to put a lot of information in front of this. I'm just going to type that, paste that in here, make this a little bit bigger. And let's make sure that we have that information. So in this case, I have placed the entire path to this on my computer. So in telling it to go starting at the D drive, go to my Dropbox folder, Lane folder, class folder, term folder, week folder, lecture folder, index. So I have specifically or absolutely told it where to get this information from. If I were to go ahead and refresh this, you'll notice it looks exactly the same. I'm actually going to view the page source. Why didn't it refresh? Where am I? Oh, I see what I did. I'm in the wrong page. This is the page I wanted. Let's refresh that. View the page source. You'll notice it does have the new absolute. And if I click on that, it still should bring up the same page. So this is another method for determining where the browser can find its resources. This is considered the wrong method of using. The reason for this is because you should be able to tell the browser in reference to where you're at, where to find this information. Because I may not keep my pages in this same location all the time. It may be very easy for me to move them out of this folder, move them into an archive folder later, and then my web pages would break. So relative addressing, relative paths are the best solution to use, and that's what I'll expect you to use throughout the remainder of the course.